Good morning. I woke up with thoughts that I wanted to share, so I thought we could have coffee together. I have had 3 messages over the last little while that all have a really common thread running through them. And the first one was from a lady who has returned to writing after a significant period off. She started writing later in life, and she has been working with a trainer that she's been going to for maybe a few months. And she describes herself as having significant anxiety. And alongside of that, she also has this inkling, this feeling that maybe the approach that her trainer is taking doesn't really jive with what she wants, that she has different values, that she has kind of something different that she's looking for. But the feelings of concern or the feelings of anxiety are making her feel like what she has to say and what she thinks about what's going on isn't as valid as what her trainer has to say, right? So there's an outsourcing of power, a kind of giving away of power, of personal power to her trainer. And so that's the first conversation that I've had. And the second one relates to a question that was posted in Joyride that really got me thinking. And it will seem quite different to that situation that I just described. But to me, I'm going to kind of bring it all together and show you how I feel like these things are united. But this was a really interesting conversation, and one that I think actually doesn't get enough airtime. So I'm going to expand on it a little bit further in a different video or a different post. But the crux of it was that she was experiencing anxiety, and then she came to realize that the anxiety wasn't hers, that it was like an emotional contagion that she was picking up from another horse and rider combination that were riding at the same time. And when this realization came, A, she wondered what to do about it, of course, but also B, she wondered if it was a thing, right? Because you're kind of like, really? Is that really what I'm intuiting here? Is that really what I'm picking up here? Is that really what's going on? Yeah, so there was like this layer of kind of doubt that crept in. And then the third conversation that I had also related to training sessions where the person in question was working with their horse, and they just had a hunch that what it is that they thought their horse might need was different to what it was that they were doing in that moment. But of course, what they were doing was what they'd been told to do. And so they kind of got along with that for a period of time, and then they tried the thing that they thought needed to happen, and it went down really well. And they were like, why didn't I do that in the first place? And so all 3 of these conversations, all 3 of these stories relate back to self-trust, that ability to trust our own voice, that ability to trust our gut and to trust our feeling. And it's interesting to me how we struggle with this. I've kind of been dissecting this and really looking it in the eye the last little while, especially when it comes to conversations or noticings that are more intuitively based, where we're like, I feel that, but perhaps there's no qualification or validation that we can latch onto with any certainty that will tell us categorically what it is we feel is right or true, or so on and so forth. And so this self-trust practice, and I think it really is a practice, becomes a practice because our nature, which essentially is intuitive, which essentially is one of perceptibility in terms of I feel into my environment, I feel into other bodies and other beings in that environment, and I get information off the back of that interoception and neuroception, that then shows up in my body with a certain energetic resonance, right? And some people would describe that as woo, oh, that's a little bit far, but actually that's a very real phenomenon, a measurable phenomenon. And so when I think about self-doubt and the self-trust rather, and the cultivation of more self-trust or developing self-trust, I ask myself, what is the opposite of self-trust? What is the opposite? And it's doubt, right? So we can often have this flash of knowing, a flash of clarity or a flash of insight that communicates to us the next step forward. But juxtaposed with that, and this can happen so soon after that our clarity is obscured, just after that moment, we have this, oh, really? Do you think so? Is that a thing? Like, are you sure? And that can come from a variety of sources. The itty bitty shitty committee can come through kind of a feeling in your gut of like confusion, or, it shows up in so many ways that often stops us acting on that initial flash of knowing. And as a consequence, it takes us further away from that. We move further away from that over time. So what I want to introduce, or what I want to kind of like add to the conversation is, first up, we've been trained out of trusting ourselves. That's something that's been happening for a long period of time. Our cultural and social models have stripped us in many cases of or perhaps they haven't stripped us of the self-trust, but they filled us with certain doubts, They filled us with certain doubts that have caused us to compare ourselves to different situations, different ideals, and have trained us out of our own sense of agency. So what do I mean by that? I mean that individual knowing, individual power has always been kind of threatening to the powers that be. And so as a consequence, the way that our society has been formed, and I'm talking about this in kind of really big picture terms, self-trust is not something that's been encouraged or cultivated. So just know that this isn't all on you, right? This is part of a wider conversation as well. But the practice is on us, right? And so the question that I ask myself when I find myself in those moments of doubting my own voice is, what good does it do to doubt myself? What good does it do to doubt myself? And what would happen if I followed my own intuition in this circumstance? So you get playful, you approach it with a sense of curiosity. Right? What would happen if? What good does it do to doubt myself? Play with those two things. This conversation around self-trust is a big one. I think it's a really important one. And it's one that I think is necessary to speak more of. So what would happen if? What would happen if I followed my own voice? What would happen if I followed my gut instinct? What would happen if I tried that thing I'd been thinking of trying? And what good does it do to doubt myself? Have a play with it.